On Christmas Eve, my son laughed and said, "You're still living in this old dump, Mom?" The very next day, he would discover I had more gold than his entire portfolio. There are wounds only a mother can understand. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if you feel for a second that this resonates with you, all I ask is that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me keep letting this off my chest. My name is Eleanor Ellie Hope Miller. I'm 74 years old, and I live in an old adobe home in the historic center of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's a building constructed in 1952 that my late husband, Arthur, bought with his first savings as a tradesman. These walls have witnessed children's laughter, the weeping of sleepless nights, and now, the most painful silence a mother can experience. That Christmas Eve in 2023, I woke up at 5 in the morning as always. My arthritic hands protested as I reached for the first spoon, but physical pain no longer matters to me. There are deeper aches. I tied on the embroidered apron my daughters gave me 15 years ago, when they still visited me out of love and not obligation, and began my Christmas ritual. The red pozole was bubbling in the cast-iron Dutch oven I inherited from my mother. The aroma of chili and savory herbs filled the kitchen as I chopped onions, tearing up from a blend of the vegetable and the anticipation of yet another family disappointment. I prepared the savory Christmas tamale pie, the handmade wedding cookies that my grandson Liam loved so much when he was little, and the spiced cider with imported Ceylon cinnamon that I bought at the local gourmet store, spending more than I should have based on my apparent income. My house has that particular scent of old Southwest homes, old wood, the subtle scent of sage used for cleansing that my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, does for me, and the faded perfume of the dried marigolds that decorated the altar of the dead 2 months ago. The stucco walls are painted a worn, faded ochre that my son Ian always criticizes. "It looks like a forgotten B&B, he says scornfully, as if he'd forgotten that in this very tiled kitchen, he ate breakfast for 18 years before leaving to study business in New York City. In the living room, the nativity scene I assembled the week before awaited the family visit. Hand-carved wooden figures I've collected since I married. The ivory baby Jesus that belonged to my great-grandmother. The shepherds my husband used to bring me from his business trips. The Virgin Mary with her sky-blue mantle already faded by 60 years of Christmases. Multicolored lights I bought at the dollar store, not the elegant LED minimalist lights Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, puts up on their house in Greenwich, Connecticut. At 7 in the evening, the bell rang. My heart raced like an adolescent waiting for her first love. I took off my apron, straightened my navy blue dress, the only dressy one I own, and opened the heavy mahogany front door that has squeaked for 5 years, but that Arthur would have fixed while he was alive. There was Ian, my eldest son, 52, tall like his father, but with that cold look he developed when he started making money investing in hedge funds. Beside him, Rebecca, his wife of 15 years, a thin woman who always smells of expensive French perfume and never meets my eyes. And my grandson, Liam, 16, with his face glued to his latest model iPhone. "Good evening, Mom," Ian said dryly, kissing my cheek like he was completing an administrative task. Rebecca walked in without a greeting, scanning the living room with that expression she wears when she sees something she considers beneath her standards. Her Hermes handbag brutally contrasted with my recycled paper napkins and my chipped ceramic plates. "You still use these lights? They're so vintage," Rebecca commented, pointing at my Christmas decorations with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "At our place, we put up minimalist Scandinavian lights. They look so sophisticated." Liam didn't lift his gaze from his phone. The boy who used to hug me shouting "Grandma Ellie," who begged me to tell him ghost stories and fell asleep in my arms watching old Christmas classics, was now a stranger visiting out of obligation. "Please have a seat. Dinner is ready," I told them, directing them to the dining room where I had placed my best tablecloth, the heirloom lace tablecloth I hand-stitched during my pregnancy with Ian. Ian stopped in the middle of the room and looked around with that expression I had learned to dread. His eyes skimmed the wooden ceiling beams, the cracked walls I haven't been able to repair, my old but lovingly maintained furniture. "Seriously, Mom," he said with a laugh that pierced my chest like a knife. "You're still living in this old dump?" I don't understand how you can live in this condemned property. His words floated in the Christmas air like a bad omen. Rebecca let out a nervous chuckle. Liam finally looked up and mumbled, "It smells weird in here. Like old people." I was paralyzed, holding the tray with hot cider. The steam rose between my trembling fingers as I processed what I had just heard. My own grandson, my own blood, had called me old as if it were an insult, as if my existence were an olfactory inconvenience. "It's the aroma of home," I whispered, more to myself than to them. But no one listened. They were already sitting at the table, Rebecca discreetly wiping her chair with a napkin before using it, Ian checking his cell phone for the price of his Bitcoin, Liam with his headphones on watching TikTok videos. I served the meal on my ceramic plates, the same ones they ate on for years. The pozole was steaming invitingly, the golden cookies waiting to be enjoyed, but the table was filled with a silence as heavy as lead. "Isn't there something more normal?" Liam asked, smelling the pozole with suspicion. "Couldn't we just order pizza? This food looks like something from a historical reenactment." And right then, in that moment, while my 74 years weighed like mountains on my shoulders, I understood that I was no longer the beloved grandmother. I was the inconvenient relic of a family that had grown upward and left me below. But they didn't know something. They didn't know about the secret I jealously guarded in the attic of this dump house. They didn't know about the gold bars I inherited from my father, the investment portfolio in euros I had silently built, the government bonds I bought every month with my pension. They didn't know that the poor old woman had more real wealth than all their digital assets combined. But that night, swallowing my tears with the pozole, I decided that one day they would know, and it would be too late. For the next 40 minutes, dinner unfolded like a silent funeral. Rebecca cut the tamal pie with the delicacy of someone dissecting something unpleasant, wincing every time her fork touched the chipped plate. Ian ate distractedly, answering work messages related to his European stock market investments, occasionally commenting on a dividend transfer he expected before the end of the year. "This pozole is too heavy, Mom," he finally said, setting down his spoon with a gesture of resignation. "You know I have a sensitive stomach since I started taking those supplements to optimize my investment performance." Liam hadn't tasted a single spoonful. He kept his headphones on, watching videos on his phone, completely ignoring the meal I had spent hours preparing. Now and then, he let out little laughs at some meme, oblivious to the uncomfortable silence thickening like fog in the dining room. "Liam, please take off your headphones for dinner," I asked gently. "It's fine, Grandma," he replied without looking at me. "I'm not hungry. This food smells really intense." Rebecca seized the opportunity to intervene with that fake smile she had perfected during 15 years of marriage. "Eleanor, don't you think it would be more practical for us to get together at a restaurant for these occasions? There are very nice places uptown. We could pay, of course." The implication was clear. My house and my cooking weren't good enough for them. I got up to serve more cider, my hands trembling slightly, not from the weight of the pitcher, but from the humiliation accumulating in my chest like water in a cracked vessel. While filling their glasses, I heard Ian whispering to Rebecca, "Look at how she lives. Nothing has changed since Dad died. These furnishings look like they're from the 50s. "They are from the 50s, I muttered, though I knew they hadn't heard me. "Like this house we bought with so much sacrifice." Rebecca continued the whisper. "We should talk to her about moving to a more appropriate place for her age. There are very nice assisted living facilities in Scottsdale, Arizona, with people her own age." The cider spilled slightly onto the lace tablecloth. My fingers no longer responded with the precision of before. Geriatric. That word had floated in the air like a social death sentence. To them, I was no longer Eleanor, the woman who had raised 3 children working double shifts at Mr. I. Johnson's corner store. I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be relocated. "Do you remember when we used to have the Christmas party here in the backyard?" I asked, trying to rescue some vestige of happy memories. "Ian, you always wanted to be the first to hit the piñata." Ian looked up from his phone for the first time in 20 minutes. "Yes, Mom. We were kids. Now I have an investment portfolio to supervise. The Asian market opens in a few hours. And I need to check my positions in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency? I asked, feigning ignorance. Is that safe? Rebecca let out a condescending laugh. Oh, Eleanor, those are very complicated concepts. Ian manages millions in digital assets. It's not something that, well, it's very technical to explain. I kept quiet, but inwardly I smiled. If they only knew I had bought my first Bitcoin in 2019 when they were $8,000 each. If they only knew that my ignorance had been my best investment. After dinner, they settled in the living room. Ian connected his laptop to my old television to show Liam something about his stock investments, a presentation full of charts and numbers that the boy followed with more interest than he had shown in the family dinner. Look, son, here we have our capital in international index funds, Ian said, pointing at the screen. And this is our crypto portfolio. Ethereum, Bitcoin, some more speculative altcoins. In total, our liquid net worth is around $2 million. Liam nodded, impressed. And with that, could we buy the Tesla we saw the other day? Sure, but you have to be smart with money. Not like, Ian paused, glancing at me. Not like people who don't understand investments. I retreated to the kitchen to wash the dishes. The warm water soothed the pain in my joints as I scrubbed the remains of the tamale pie stuck to the crockery. From there, I could hear their conversations about yields, interest rates, and plans for a trip to Europe financed by the profits from their latest stock transactions. What if we buy a bigger house? Rebecca suggested. With that money we have in the investment funds, we could put down the down payment for something in the exclusive country club. First, we need Mom to understand that this house no longer makes sense, Ian replied, lowering his voice. But not enough. We could sell it, help her move into something more modest, and use the difference to expand our portfolio. Sell it. My home. The place where Arthur and I had built our dreams, where I had given birth to my 3 children when there was no money for a private hospital, where I had comforted their nightmares and celebrated their first steps. To them, it was simply a real estate asset to be liquidated. I stopped washing dishes. My hands remained motionless under the soapy water, while the tears I had held back all evening finally found their way down my wrinkled cheeks. They were not only tears of sadness, but of a silent rage beginning to well up from a very deep place within my soul. At 11 o'clock, they prepared to leave. Liam said goodbye with a quick kiss on the cheek, already wearing his jacket and keys in hand. Thanks for dinner, Grandma. It was interesting. Rebecca gave me a cold hug, the kind you give when there are witnesses. Take good care of yourself, Eleanor. You're not up for so much hustle anymore. You should rest more. Ian was the last to say goodbye. He hugged me with that mixture of guilt and haste that characterized all his displays of affection. Mom, we'll talk properly later. We need to make some important decisions about your future. My future, I repeated, savoring the words. Yes? You can't keep living as if you were 30. This house is too big for you alone, and frankly, too expensive to maintain on your income. They left behind the scent of expensive perfume and the feeling of having been tolerated in my own house. I stood in the doorway, watching the taillights of their BMW disappear among the cobblestone streets of the historic center. I returned to the living room. The plates were still on the table, the napkins crumpled, cookie crumbs scattered on my lace tablecloth. The nativity scene watched me from its corner. The ivory baby Jesus seemed a silent witness to my humiliation. I picked up a photograph I had on the mantelpiece. It was from Christmas 1998, when Ian was 27 and had just gotten his first job at the bank. In the picture, he was hugging me, smiling, with baby Liam in his arms. I was wearing the same embroidered apron as tonight, but my smile was genuine, my eyes shining with hope. 25 years later, the same son who hugged me with gratitude in that photo had called me an old woman and suggested selling my house as if it were just another real estate asset in his investment portfolio. I put the photograph in the sideboard drawer and slowly climbed the wooden stairs that creaked under my feet. In my bedroom, I took off the navy blue dress and put on my white cotton nightgown, the one I've worn for 10 years because it's soft against my sensitive skin. Before going to bed, I walked to the window overlooking the interior courtyard. There is the orange tree that Arthur planted when Ian was born, now laden with fruit that no one comes to harvest. The neighbor's Christmas lights reflected in the tiles of the colonial well, creating a play of colors that usually calmed me. But that night, as I lay in the matrimonial bed where I had slept alone for 12 years, an idea began to take shape in my mind. An idea involving the cedar chest I kept in the attic, the papers no one else knew about, the inheritance from my father that I had wisely invested for decades. Tomorrow, I would call Rob Andrews, my trusted lawyer. It was time for my family to know who Eleanor Hope Miller really was. And it was time for them to learn that underestimating a 74-year-old woman could be the most costly mistake of their lives. The days following that Christmas Eve were like walking through an emotional desert. I woke up every morning at 5:30, as I had for 50 years. But now the silence of the house resonated differently. It wasn't the peaceful silence of chosen solitude, but the hollow echo of imposed loneliness. On December 26th, while I was brewing my strong, slow-brewed coffee with cinnamon and brown sugar in the kitchen, the phone rang. It was my daughter, Laura, the middle one, calling from Dallas, Texas, where she lives with her family. "How was Christmas Eve, Mom?" she asked, with that cheerful voice she always used for family calls. "Fine, honey. Ian, Rebecca, and Liam came," I lied, stirring the coffee harder than necessary. "And? How did they behave? Did they help you with anything?" A pause. How could I explain to my daughter that her older brother had humiliated me in my own house? How to tell her that my grandson had treated me like an annoying old piece of furniture? "Your brother thinks I should move to a smaller place," I finally said. "What? Leave the house?" "But Mom, that's your house. We were all born there. All the family history is there. To him, it's just an unnecessary expense," I whispered. Laura was silent on the other end of the line. I knew she had her own problems. An unemployed husband, 2 children in college, debts that kept her awake at night. I couldn't burden her with my sorrows, too. "Mom, do you need money? I can send you something, not much, but—" "No, honey, I'm fine," I lied again. "Take care of your family." After hanging up, I stood in the kitchen looking at my reflection in the refrigerator door. A 74-year-old woman, with white hair pulled back in a bun, wrinkles that told stories of smiles and tears, dressed in a housecoat that had seen better days. To the outside world, to my own children, I was exactly what I looked like, a widowed pensioner living on her modest income. But that afternoon, as the sun began to set and the cathedral bells marked 5 o'clock, I went up to the attic. I moved boxes full of Christmas memories, yellowed photographs, Arthur's clothes that I hadn't dared to donate, until I reached the cedar chest that my father had given me as a wedding dowry. Inside were my secrets, the documents for the stocks I had bought with my paternal inheritance when my children thought I had spent everything on Arthur's medical expenses, the certificates for the gold bars I kept in a safety deposit box at the First National Bank, gold that my father had accumulated during years of commerce in northern Nevada, the papers for my euro investments, bought when the dollar was weak in 2018 and everyone spoke of crisis, and the most recent, the statements for my cryptocurrency portfolio, Bitcoin, Ethereum, even some riskier investments I had made following the advice of a young financial advisor who worked discreetly with women of my generation. While Ian boasted about his $2 million, I had a net worth exceeding 4 million euros. The irony made me smile for the first time in days. My son, the investment expert, the one who condescendingly explained what cryptocurrencies were, had less real capital than his poor, ignorant mother. The next day, December 27th, something happened that broke my heart into smaller pieces. I was watering the plants in my courtyard when I heard familiar voices in the street. It was Rebecca talking on the phone with someone, standing right in front of my house. "Yes, it's this old house downtown," she was saying, pointing at my colonial facade. "I don't understand how she can live here. The neighborhood isn't what it used to be. And inside, my God, it looks like a pauper's museum." I hid behind the geranium pots, feeling my heart pound with a mixture of curiosity and dread. "Measuring?" "Yes, honey. And taking photos from different angles, like realtors do when they're going to sell a property." My world spun. Not only did they want to get rid of me, they were already evaluating it, pricing it, preparing its sale as if I were already dead. That night, I couldn't eat dinner. I sat in my rocking chair, the same one where I had nursed my 3 children, looking at the walls of my house as if seeing them for the first time. Every crack, every damp stain, every imperfection they saw as signs of decay were, to me, honorable scars of a life fully lived. On December 28th, April Fool's Day, the irony of the calendar hit me like a slap, because I had been the fool for too long. That morning, while sweeping the courtyard and feeding the stray cats that came to my door, my neighbor Mrs. Hernandez approached with a worried look. "Eleanor, yesterday I saw your daughter-in-law measuring the front of your house with a tape measure. Is everything all right?" I froze, the broom suspended in the air. "Measuring?" "Yes, honey. And taking pictures from different angles, like realtors do when they go to sell a property." The world tilted. Not only were they planning to steal my home, they were already evaluating it, quoting a price for it, preparing its sale as if I were already dead. That afternoon, I called Robert Andrews, my trusted lawyer for 15 years, an honest man who had helped Arthur with some store paperwork and knew my true financial situation. "Counselor, I need to see you urgently," I told him. "What's wrong, Mrs. Miller? You sound worried." "My family wants to put me in a geriatric home and sell my house. I think it's time for them to know who I really am." A silence. "Are you sure? Once you reveal your assets, you won't be able to turn back." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That night, for the first time in a week, I slept deeply, not because I had found peace, but because I had finally found a purpose. Tomorrow, I would begin to show my family that they had gravely underestimated the woman who had raised them. On December 29th, the morning dawned with that typical Santa Fe winter fog, a gray curtain that enveloped the historic streets like an omen. I dressed in my best clothes, the navy blue suit I had bought for Arthur's funeral, and only wore on solemn occasions. Today was a solemn occasion, though no one else knew it yet. Robert Andrews arrived promptly at 10 in the morning. He's a 60-year-old man, with that discreet elegance of old-school lawyers, always impeccably dressed but without ostentation. He carried a worn leather briefcase and that kind look that had reassured me during so many years of legal procedures. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," he greeted me, taking off his hat as his father had taught him. "How are you?" "Determined, counselor. Completely determined." I invited him into the living room. I had prepared strong coffee and sweet pastries from Mr. Wow, Thompson's Bakery, those rituals of hospitality my mother had taught me, and that I would never abandon, regardless of the circumstances. "Tell me what's happening," he said, settling into Arthur's armchair. I explained everything: the humiliating Christmas Eve, the conversations about the assisted living facility, the plan to sell my house, Rebecca's secret measurements. With every word that came out of my mouth, I saw Robert's expression harden. "Mrs. Miller, this is very serious. Not just from a legal standpoint, but morally," he said, pulling a notepad from his briefcase. "Do they have any legal power over you? Any signed documents?" "Nothing. I am completely legally independent." "Good. Then we will proceed with the plan we discussed on the phone." Just then, as if the universe had conspired to create the perfect moment, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Ian's BMW parking in front of my house. He came alone, without Rebecca or Liam. "Perfect," Robert muttered. "Are you ready for this?" My heart was beating like a war drum, but I nodded. It was time. Ian entered with that false smile he had perfected for courtesy visits. He was wearing one of his expensive suits, probably financed by the profits from his latest stock investments. "Hi, Mom. How have you been?" He kissed my cheek mechanically, then noticed Robert. "And you are?" "Robert Andrews, your mother's lawyer," Robert replied, standing up to shake Ian's hand. "A pleasure to meet you." I saw Ian's face change immediately. That look of alarm that children get when they suspect their parents are making decisions without consulting them. "Lawyer? Why do you need a lawyer, Mom?" he asked, addressing me but keeping his eyes on Robert. "Sit down, son," I said, pointing to the armchair across from us. "We have important things to discuss." Ian sat down stiffly, with that defensive posture he adopted when he sensed trouble. His eyes darted between Robert and me, trying to figure out what was happening. Look, Mom, if this is about what we talked about the other night, you don't have to get dramatic. We just want what's best for you. He began with that condescending voice I hated so much. Rebecca and I have been looking at options, and there are very nice places where you could be more comfortable. Are you referring to the assisted living facility in Scottsdale? I asked directly. He blushed. He hadn't expected me to know the specific details of their plans. Well, yes, it's a very elegant residence. You'd have company from people your age, activities, 24-hour medical care, and you would keep the money from the sale of my house to expand your investment portfolio. I completed the sentence. Ian turned pale. His eyes immediately went to Robert, as if trying to assess how much the lawyer knew of their plans. Mom, I don't know what they've told you, but we only want to protect you. This house is too big for you, too expensive to maintain. Son? I interrupted him firmly. Before you continue that conversation, there's something you need to know about my real situation. Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder full of documents. He placed them on the coffee table, between the cups of coffee and the sweet pastries no one had touched. Your mother has asked me to present a summary of her current net worth, Robert said in a professional voice. So you have a complete picture before making any decisions about your future. Ian frowned. Net worth? Mom, you live on your pension. What net worth are you talking about? Robert unfolded the first document. Let's start with the gold investments. Your mother currently owns 5 pure gold bars of 400 troy ounces each, deposited in the safety deposit box at the First National Bank. At the current price of gold, this represents approximately 890,000 euros. I watched Ian's jaw slowly drop. What? What did you say? Let's continue, Robert went on imperturbably. Investment portfolio in European stocks, 1.2 million euros distributed in German index funds, Spanish government bonds, and shares in French technology companies. Ian had gone completely still, as if his brain had disconnected. Cryptocurrency investments, Robert continued. 47. Bitcoins acquired between 2019 and 2021, 230 ethers, and a diversified altcoin portfolio. Current approximate value, 1.8 million euros. This is impossible, Ian murmured. Mom, From your grandfather, I replied calmly. The inheritance you all thought I had spent on your father's medicine. From my life savings. From being smarter with money than you ever imagined. Robert showed the last document. Additional properties. 2 rental apartments in the Nob Hill district, a commercial storefront downtown, and a 5-acre plot of land outside of Taos. Total estimated value, 650,000 euros. The total net worth of your mother, Robert concluded, amounts to 4.54 million euros, approximately $5.0 million US dollars at the current exchange rate. The silence that followed was sepulchral. Ian looked at me as if I were a ghost, as if the woman he had known his whole life had disappeared, and a strange multi-millionaire was sitting in her place. I don't understand, he finally whispered. Why live like this if you have so much money? Because I wanted to know who loved me for who I am, not for what I have, I answered, feeling a mixture of sadness and liberation. I wanted to know if my children would visit me even if they thought I was a poor old woman with nothing to offer them. Mom, I already got my answer. I cut him off gently. Ian stood up, staggering, as if he had received a physical blow. He walked to the window, staying there for several minutes processing the information. When he turned around, his eyes were full of tears. What can I do to fix this? He asked with a choked voice. It was the first time in years that I heard genuine vulnerability in my son's voice. Part of me, the motherly part that would never die, wanted to comfort him immediately, but another part, the part that had been humiliated and scorned, knew that the tears came too late and for the wrong reasons. First, I said to him, you are going to cancel any plan you have regarding my house. Second, you are going to explain to your wife that her mother-in-law is not the useless old woman she thought. And third, I paused, looking him directly in the eyes, you are going to decide if you want a real relationship with me, or if you prefer to continue pretending you love me while planning how to profit from my supposed poverty. Ian slumped into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. And for the first time in my life, I held all the power. The following 3 days were a whirlwind of phone calls, unexpected visits, and desperate pleas. Ian had left my house that December 29th like a defeated man, but apparently, he had decided the war wasn't over. The first call came that same night, at 11:15. It was Rebecca, with that honeyed voice she used when she needed something important. "Eleanor, darling, how are you? Ian told me about the meeting with the lawyer. What a wonderful surprise to know you've been so foresighted with your finances." Foresighted. As if my decades of work and sacrifice were a stroke of luck. "What do you need, Rebecca?" I asked her directly. "Well, I think there was a huge misunderstanding. We never wanted you to feel, well, you know. We just wanted to take care of you. And now that we know you have this incredible fortune, well, we can do so many things together." I listened to her talk for 10 minutes about plans for family trips to Europe, joint investments, and even the possibility of buying a bigger house where we could all live comfortably. All financed, of course, with my money. "Rebecca," I interrupted her, "do you remember what you said about my house on December 25th? Uncomfortable silence. What exactly did I say? That it looked like a pauper's museum. That the neighborhood wasn't what it used to be. That it would need a complete remodel to be habitable. Oh, Eleanor, I was stressed. You know how the holidays are. One says things without thinking. And yesterday, when my neighbor saw you measuring my facade, were you also stressed?" Another silence, this one longer. "I can explain that." "You don't need to explain anything." I understood perfectly. I hung up. For the first time in 15 years, I hung up on my daughter-in-law. The next day, December 30th, the three of them appeared together, Ian, Rebecca, and Liam. They arrived at 2 in the afternoon with flowers, a box of expensive Swiss chocolates, and smiles so bright they could have lit up the entire historic center of Santa Fe. "Grandma!" Liam exclaimed, hugging me with an enthusiasm he hadn't shown in years. "Dad told me you're super rich. That's amazing." Rebecca gave him a discreet nudge, but the damage was done. The brutal honesty of a teenager had revealed exactly why they were there. "Mom," Ian began, using the tone he employed for negotiating important contracts, "we've come to formally apologize. We made huge mistakes, but we want to make amends." "What kind of amends?" I asked, crossing my arms. Rebecca stepped forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, we thought we could redesign our family relationship, be more united. Maybe we could form a kind of family business. You have the experience and the capital. We have the youth and the modern investment knowledge. We could multiply your money," Ian added, getting excited. "I have contacts in high-yield funds, opportunities in emerging cryptocurrencies, investments in tech startups. And I could help you with the social side," Rebecca continued. "You know important people, the country club, charity events. You could live like the wealthy woman you truly are." I watched them during their sales pitch, because that was exactly what I was witnessing. A business presentation disguised as family reconciliation. They had calculated my value, identified my usefulness, and had come to negotiate the terms of my new role in their lives. "And what if I said no?" I asked. "Why would you say no?" Ian responded, genuinely confused. "This is best for everyone. We could be a powerful, influential family. Rich," Liam added without a filter. "Liam!" Rebecca scolded him, but I had already heard enough. "I want you to leave," I told them in a calm but firm voice. "What?" Ian asked. "Mom, we just offered you an incredible opportunity. You are offering me a partnership in my own life. You are asking me to hire you to be my family," I explained. "For 74 years, I have known the difference between genuine love and calculated interest. You have just shown me which of the two you feel for me." Rebecca tried another tactic. "Eleanor, I understand you're hurt, but think about it. What are you going to do with so much money? Take it to the grave? In the end, we are your family. It's all going to be ours eventually." Those words were like an icy slap. It's all going to be ours eventually. There wasn't an ounce of love in that statement, only an expectation of inheritance. "Robert," I said, addressing the phone. Could you come over? I need to make some urgent changes to my will. Ian's face crumpled. What changes? Mom, you can't make important decisions when you're angry. I'm not angry, I replied, with a calmness that surprised even myself. I am thinking more clearly than ever in my life. That night, after they left with their untouched flowers and chocolates, I called my daughter Laura in Dallas. Honey, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer me with total honesty. Of course, Mom. What is it? If I told you I have a lot of money, more than you ever imagined, would it change anything between us? A long pause. Do you mean, would I treat you differently? Laura asked slowly. Exactly. Mom, I love you because you're my mother. Because you taught me to sew. Because you nursed me when I had the flu. Because you worked double shifts to pay for my nursing school. Whether you had money or not. Well, of course I'd be happy because you could live more comfortably. But that wouldn't change how I feel about you. And if I told you I do have a lot of money, but that your brother and sister-in-law have been planning to put me in an assisted living facility to take my house? The silence on the other end was absolute. Put you in? Are you sick? No, honey. I'm just old, according to them, and inconvenient for their financial plans. Mom, Laura said with a trembling voice, what do you need me to do? It was the first time in days that someone had asked me what I needed, instead of explaining what they needed from me. The next day, December 31st, while Santa Fe prepared to welcome 2024, I prepared to make the most radical change of my life. Robert arrived early with all the necessary documents. Are you completely sure about this, Mrs. Miller? He asked as we reviewed the papers. I have never been more sure of anything, Counselor. I signed every page with a steady hand. My entire fortune would pass into a trust managed by Robert, with specific beneficiaries. Laura would receive 40%, Eliza, my granddaughter, Laura's daughter, would receive 35%, and the remaining 25% would go to a foundation to help elderly women in situations of family abandonment. Ian, Rebecca, and Liam were completely excluded. That night, as fireworks lit up the Santa Fe sky announcing the new year, I sat on my patio with a glass of red wine. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. My phone rang at 11:58 p.m. It was a message from Ian. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. We can start over in 2024. I love you. I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some loves arrive too late, and some decisions have no turning back. The new year had arrived, and with it, my new life. On January 15th, 2024, 2 weeks after signing my new will, I received a call that chilled my blood. It was Robert's secretary, her voice nervous and urgent. Mrs. Miller, you need to come to the office immediately. They have attempted unauthorized transfers from your bank accounts. I arrived at the law office in less than an hour, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. Robert was waiting for me with the most serious expression I had seen on him in 15 years of knowing him. Sit down, Mrs. Miller, he said, pointing to the chair across from his desk. What I am about to tell you is very serious. He spread several documents on the table. They were bank forms, transfer requests, documents I immediately recognized. They bore my signature, or something that looked very much like my signature. At 3 a.m. on January 12th, someone attempted to transfer 2.5 million euros from your main account to a Wells Fargo account in the name of Ian Miller, Robert explained. Fortunately, we had established additional security protocols after our meeting, and the bank blocked the operation. My hands trembled as I examined the papers. My own signature, forged with a precision that terrified me. How long had they been practicing? How many times had they traced my name until they perfected it? There's more, Robert continued. They also attempted to access your safety deposit box at the First National Bank using a forged ID. The manager stopped them because he remembered you had come in personally the previous week to update the security measures. I leaned back in the chair, feeling as if the air had thickened to the point of being unbreathable. It wasn't just that they had tried to steal from me. They had carefully planned to strip me of everything I owned. How did they get access to my bank details? I asked in a choked voice. Your son has keys to your house, Robert replied. He probably photographed your personal documents during one of his visits. I remembered all the times Ian had gone up to the bathroom alone, the occasions when he had stayed to help while I went to the market, the moments when he had insisted on staying a little longer, to chat. He hadn't been chatting. He had been investigating, rummaging, photographing every paper that could give him access to my money. "What can we do legally?" I asked. "We can file a complaint for attempted fraud and forgery of documents. With the evidence we have, it's a solid case," Robert responded. "But I need to ask you, are you willing to have your own son go to jail?" The question pierced me like a dagger. One thing was to disinherit him. Quite another was to send him to prison. No matter how much he had betrayed me, he was still the baby I had carried in my arms, the child I had comforted during his nightmares. "Let me think about it," I whispered. That afternoon, when I returned home, I found Ian waiting for me in the living room. He had keys, of course. The same keys he had used to violate my privacy and plan to rob me. "Hi, Mom." He greeted me with a strained smile. "We need to talk." "I think we've talked enough," I replied, staying near the door. "Listen to me, please. I know I made mistakes, but I can explain everything." He got up from the armchair and walked toward me. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own son. Not physical fear, but something deeper. Fear of what he was capable of doing for money. "The bank called me about some blocked transactions," I continued, observing his reaction. His face collapsed for a fraction of a second before he regained his composure. "Mom, I can explain that." "Explain what?" "Explain how you forged my signature? Explain how you planned to steal 2.5 million euros from me while I slept?" "It wasn't stealing," he exploded, finally showing his true face. "It was my inheritance. All that money is going to be mine when you die, so what difference does it make if I take it now or later?" His words echoed in the room like a recorded confession. There was the naked truth. To him, I was already dead. I was just a temporary obstacle between him and my money. "Do you know what the difference is?" I asked him in a calm voice. "It's not going to be yours anymore. Not now, and not ever." "What do you mean by that?" "I changed my will. My entire fortune is going to Laura Eliza and a foundation for women abandoned by their families." The silence that followed was the most terrifying of my life. I saw something definitely break in Ian's eyes, as if the last pretense of filial love vanished, and only naked greed remained. "You can't do that," he murmured. "I'm your eldest son. I have rights. The only rights you had were the ones I wanted to give you out of love. And that love ended the moment you decided that I was worth more dead than alive." "You're a selfish old woman," he yelled, completely losing control. "My whole life I planned to have that inheritance. Rebecca and I have made sacrifices waiting for that money." "Sacrifices? What sacrifices?" "Coming to visit you, putting up with this dump of a house, enduring your horrible meals and your boring stories. We did all that thinking about the future." Every word was a more painful revelation than the last. Every hug had been calculated. Every smile had a price. Every "I love you, Mom" had been a long-term investment. "Get out of my house," I told him in a firm voice. "What?" "Get out of my house and give me back the keys." "I'm not leaving. This house is mine too. I grew up here. This house is mine, and you are no longer welcome." For a moment, I feared he would become violent, but Ian knew that any physical aggression would completely destroy his chances of recovering any of the inheritance in the future. "This won't end here," he threatened as he headed for the door. "I'm going to contest the will. I'm going to prove you're senile, that they manipulated you." "Do it," I replied. "But do it from a distance." He left, slamming the door so hard the colonial windows shook, but he didn't return the keys. That same night, I called a locksmith. By 10 o'clock, all the locks on my house had been changed. It was a powerful symbolism. I had not only changed the physical locks, I had changed the emotional locks on my heart. The next day, Rebecca appeared accompanied by Liam. I saw them from the window, she insistently ringing the doorbell, him recording everything with his phone, probably to use it as evidence of my erratic behavior. I didn't open the door for them. I sat in my rocking chair, drinking chamomile tea, listening to Rebecca scream from the street. "Eleanor, we know you're in there. Open the door. We have to talk as a family." Family. That word had lost all meaning for me. After an hour of shouting and threats, they left. But Rebecca slipped a letter under the door. I read it that night. Eleanor, we understand you're confused and hurt, but what you're doing isn't fair. Liam is your grandson. He has a right to his inheritance. You can't punish an innocent child for his parents' mistakes. If you don't reconsider your decision, we will be forced to take legal action to protect our son's rights. I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. Liam had stopped being an innocent child the day he called me a smelly old woman in my own house. That night, as the cathedral bells marked midnight, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in decades, I was completely alone in my house. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. The war had officially begun, but I had something they never had: the truth on my side and enough money to defend it to the end. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to fight. The morning of February 3rd dawned with a radiant sun that filtered through my bedroom windows like a promise of new beginnings. I got up at 6, not with the heaviness of the past few months, but with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I had slept soundly for the first time in weeks, without jolts, without nightmares about people knocking on my door or forging my signature. I dressed with special care. Not the navy blue funeral suit, but a floral dress I had bought years ago and never dared to wear because Rebecca had commented that it was too juvenile for my age. I styled my hair differently, leaving my white hair loose instead of the severe bun I always wore. I put on the pearl earrings Arthur had given me for our 20th anniversary, stored in a small box for years because I didn't have special occasions to wear them. Today was all a special occasion. Today, my new life officially began. I went down to the kitchen and prepared my strong coffee, but this time I added good cinnamon, the expensive kind, not the cheap one I had been buying out of habit. I put music on the radio, classic jazz standards that I hadn't listened to since Arthur died, and allowed myself to dance alone in my kitchen while the aroma of the coffee filled the house. At 9, the phone rang. It was Laura, calling from Dallas with that contagious joy she always had in her voice. "Good morning, Mom. How did you wake up?" "Like new, honey. Completely refreshed." "I'm so glad to hear that. Listen, I have news that will excite you. Eliza wants to talk to you." My granddaughter Eliza, 22, a veterinary student at the University of Texas. The only one of my grandchildren who wrote me letters by hand, who sent me photos of the animals she cured in her practice, who called me Grandma Ellie with genuine affection. "Grandma!" I heard her crystalline voice on the other end of the line. "Mom told me everything. I can't believe what Uncle Ian and Rebecca did to you. It's over, my dear. The present is what matters. Grandma, I want to come visit you. I have a vacation next week, and I really want to see the house where Mom grew up, where you've lived all your life, and I want you to tell me stories about when you were young, when you met Grandpa." Her words touched my heart like a warm caress. How long had it been since someone wanted to hear my stories, to know my life, not just to get something from me? "Of course, my child. This house will always be open for you." That afternoon, for the first time in months, I left the house not out of necessity, but for pleasure. I walked through the historic streets as if seeing them with new eyes. I stopped at the plaza, what an appropriate name, and sat on a bench to watch the people, families strolling with children running among the pigeons, couples in love taking photos in front of the cathedral, tourists admiring the colonial architecture that I had taken for granted for decades. Everyone living their lives with that intensity I had forgotten existed. I went into the local independent bookstore that was on the main street. I had passed it thousands of times on my way to the market, but I had never gone in. Why? Ian always said reading was a waste of time at my age. I walked through the aisles, touching the books, reading titles, discovering worlds I had ignored because I considered them not appropriate for me. I bought 3 books, one of poetry by Maya Angelou, one on the history of women in America, and a romantic novel that had caught my attention. When the cashier, a young woman in her 20s, saw my selections, she smiled genuinely. "Excellent choices, ma'am. Are these a gift?" "No, honey, they're for me." "That's wonderful. I love to see people your age who are still curious and reading. People my age." Before, that phrase would have hurt, reminded me of my limitations. Now, it sounded like an acknowledgement of wisdom, experience, a hard-earned right to do whatever I pleased. I left the bookstore and crossed the street toward a boutique I had always admired from afar. It was called Hope's Corner, like my middle name, and had beautiful dresses in the window that I had never dared to try on. I entered timidly. The saleswoman, an elegant lady in her 50s, greeted me with professional courtesy. "Good afternoon. How may I help you?" "I want to look good," I said with an honesty that surprised me. "I'm 74 years old, and I want to dress like the woman I am, not the one others expect me to be." Her smile transformed into something genuine and warm. "Ma'am, let me tell you, you've come to the right place." For the next hour, I tried on dresses, blouses, and trousers I would never have considered before. Colors that Rebecca would have called inappropriate for my age. Styles that Ian would have criticized as too flashy. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I liked what I saw. I wasn't an old woman trying to look young. I was a mature woman who had decided to shine with her own light. I bought 3 complete outfits, comfortable but elegant shoes, and a French perfume that smelled of gardenias and freedom. When I pulled out my credit card to pay, the saleswoman noticed my last name. "Miller? By any chance, do you know Ian Miller? I work with him on some investments." "He's my son," I simply replied. "What a coincidence. He always talks about how proud he is to have such a—" She paused, clearly remembering the descriptions Ian would have given of me. "Such a beloved mother. What did he tell you about me?" The woman blushed, realizing she had put her foot in her mouth. "Well, he mentions that you are very traditionalist, that you prefer a simple life. Traditionalist. Code for poor and without style." I laughed with genuine amusement. My son doesn't know me as well as he thinks. That evening, while trying on my new clothes at home, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a young woman I didn't recognize. She was a brunette, about 25, well-dressed, with a baby in her arms. I opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Miller?" she asked in a nervous voice. "I'm Carrie, his girlfriend. My 16-year-old grandson had a girlfriend and a baby, information my family had deemed irrelevant to share with me." "Come in, honey," I said, noticing how she was trembling slightly. "Ma'am, I came because Liam told me what happened, about the money, the will, and I wanted you to know that we never knew you had money." She sat in my living room holding the baby, a beautiful boy of about 8 months with the Miller family's large eyes. "This is Ethan," she told me. He's your great-grandson, my great-grandson. A baby who carried my blood and whom I didn't know because no one had considered it important to introduce him to me." "May I hold him?" I asked. Carrie carefully handed him to me. Ethan looked at me with that infinite curiosity of babies, without prejudices, without expectations, only with the pure openness of someone seeing the world for the first time. When I smiled at him, he smiled back, and something in my chest filled with a warmth I had forgotten existed. "Mrs. Miller," Carrie continued, "I grew up without a grandmother. Mine died when I was very little. I always dreamed of having a grandmother who loved me, who knew my son. And what does Liam think about this? He's confused. His parents told him you hate them now, that you turned evil because of money. But I told them that couldn't be true, that grandmothers don't turn evil out of the blue." I spent the next hour getting to know Carrie, listening to how she had fallen in love with my grandson in high school, how they had struggled when she became pregnant, how she worked at a coffee shop to support her baby while Liam finished school. She was a hard-working, honest young woman, with that determination I recognized because I had it at her age. "Carrie," I said as she prepared to leave, "I want you to know that the doors of this house are open to you and to Ethan always, regardless of what happens with the rest of the family." She left tearfully grateful, but not before giving me her phone number. That night, lying in bed with my new books and the scent of my new perfume filling the room, I realized something extraordinary. I had begun to build a new family, not based on blood or obligation, but on genuine affection and mutual respect. I had Laura, who loved me unconditionally, Eliza, who wanted to know my stories, Carrie and Ethan, who needed a real grandmother, and I had myself, rediscovered, renewed, ready to live the life I had always deserved. For the first time in 74 years, I felt completely free to be who I really was. And who I really was, I discovered, was extraordinary. 6 months later, on a hot day in August 2024, I was sitting on the terrace of the Hotel St. Francis in the historic center of Santa Fe, having coffee and reading the newspaper when I saw a news item that made me smile with a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. Local investment firm faces lawsuits over client fund mismanagement. Ian Miller, director of Miller & Associates Investments, is being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, for alleged irregularities in the management of high-yield portfolios. I put the newspaper on the wrought iron table and watched the colonial fountain bubbling in front of me. Life has curious ways of balancing the pending accounts. While Ian struggled with the consequences of his questionable financial decisions, I had found a peace that was priceless. My house had transformed into something I never imagined. A home full of real life. Carrie came 3 times a week with Ethan, who was now walking and calling me Gigi, with that smile that brightened any gray day. I had set up the guest room with a crib, imported educational toys, and everything a great-grandson deserved to have. Carrie had left her job at the coffee shop. I offered to pay for the business administration studies she had always dreamed of pursuing, and now she managed a small investment I made in her name, a $220,000 USD fund that generated enough dividends for her to live comfortably while studying. It was my way of ensuring my great-grandson would grow up with opportunities, not with lack. Liam had come to see me once in June, without his parents. He arrived shyly, ashamed, with that awkwardness of teenagers who know they messed up but aren't sure how to fix it. "Grandma, I wanted to apologize," he had said, standing in my living room as if it were foreign territory. "My parents told me things about you that weren't true." "Like what things, honey?" "That you had gone crazy because of money, that you hated us, that you had decided to punish us because we didn't visit you enough." I stayed silent, letting him process his own words. "But Carrie told me the truth. She told me how we treated you on Christmas Eve, the things we said." His eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, I didn't know you had feelings. To me, you were just Grandma, like a piece of furniture that had always been there." His brutal honesty hurt and moved me at the same time. At least he was honest, which was more than I could say for his parents. "And what do you think now, Liam? That I want to really know you? Not for money or anything like that. Just because you're my grandmother, and I never gave you a chance to be one." I gave him that chance. He came on Saturday afternoons, sometimes with Carrie and Ethan, sometimes alone. I taught him how to play dominoes like my father had taught me. I told him stories about when Santa Fe was smaller, about how I had met his grandfather at a church fair. I showed him photographs of when his dad was a child, before money became more important than people. The relationship with Laura had flourished in ways I hadn't expected. She came to visit me in May with her whole family, and for the first time, I could be the generous grandmother I had always wanted to be. I paid for them to stay in a 5-star hotel instead of making them sleep in my living room, took them to the best restaurants in town, and gave her children, my other grandchildren, enough money to buy whatever they wanted at the local upscale shopping mall. But the most important thing was seeing how Laura looked at me, not with pity, not with obligation, but with genuine pride. "Mom, you're unrecognizable," she had told me as we strolled through the Santa Fe Plaza, buying crafts that I genuinely liked instead of things I thought I could afford. "You look powerful." Powerful. That word resonated with me for days, because that was exactly how I felt. Not just because of the money, but because I had regained control of my own narrative. Eliza had kept her promise to visit me. She spent an entire week in July, sleeping at my house, helping me in the garden, listening to my stories with that attention only given by people who truly love you. I gave her Arthur's pearl earrings, the ones I had worn for the first time the day I decided to be reborn, and told her the secret of the apple pie recipe that had been passed down through 4 generations of Miller women. "Grandma," she had told me the night before she left, "when I finish my degree, I want to move to Santa Fe. I want to be close to you, hear more stories, learn more recipes, I want the baby I have someday to know his great-grandmother. I had also used part of my assets to establish the Eleanor Miller Foundation for Elderly Women in Abandonment. Robert helped me structure it legally, and we had already helped 8 ladies who were in situations similar to mine. We provided them with legal advice, emotional support, and, in extreme cases, financial resources so they could live with dignity. One of them, Mrs. Davis, 78, had been literally kicked out of her house by a daughter-in-law who wanted the property. Now she lived in a nice apartment in the Nob Hill district, paid for by the foundation, and came to have coffee with me on Thursday afternoons. We had formed a solid friendship based on shared experiences and rediscovered laughter. As for Ian and Rebecca, they hadn't completely disappeared from my life, but they had learned the new rules. They tried to contact me several times after their company's scandal, first with desperate calls, then with lawyers' letters, finally with veiled pleas sent through mutual acquaintances. The last letter I received, dated July 15th, said, "Mom, I know we made terrible mistakes, but we're still family. Rebecca and I are going through very difficult financial times due to issues with our investors. We're not asking you to forgive us immediately, but please consider that Liam is not to blame for our mistakes. He needs you, and we know you need him too." I put the letter away without responding. Liam was already coming to see me by his own choice. He didn't need his parents using him as emotional leverage. This morning, while having breakfast at my new favorite spot downtown, my phone rang. It was Carrie. "Gigi, can you come over? Ethan just said his first complete word, and we want you to hear it." I arrived at their apartment, also discreetly financed by me, and found my 1-year-old great-grandson standing next to the sofa, wobbling but proud of his balance. "Come here, my love," I said, extending my arms. "What are you going to tell me?" Ethan looked at me with those enormous eyes he had inherited from the family, smiled with 4 tiny teeth, and in a clear voice said, "Gigi, not Mom or Dad." His first word had been for me. I cried. But they were tears of such pure happiness that I didn't remember ever feeling anything similar. Now, sitting on this terrace as the sun sets behind the cathedral, I reflect on the most extraordinary year of my 74 years of life. I lost a family that never truly loved me, but I gained one that chooses me every day. I lost the illusion of being loved out of obligation, but I gained the certainty of being loved by choice. My net worth continues to grow. The cryptocurrency investments I made last year have had spectacular returns. But now money is a tool to create happiness, not a source of anxiety about who wants or uses me. My house smells of fresh flowers, freshly brewed coffee, gardenia perfume. The walls echo with baby laughter, deep conversations with Carrie, and the music I play without asking anyone's permission. In the afternoons, I read my books on the patio, water the plants that now bloom profusely, and talk with my adopted cats who purr on my legs as if they had always known I had a lot of love to give. The lesson I learned is priceless. It's never too late to stop buying love and start demanding respect. It's never too late to close the door on those who hurt you and open it wide to those who choose you. I am 74 years old. 7 million euros in assets, and a life that is finally mine. Have you lived through or known someone who has gone through something similar? Tell me about it in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, give me your like and subscribe to the channel. Maybe this message will reach someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose dignity over despair, respect over pity, and true love over convenience. Because sometimes, to find your true family, you first have to have the courage to lose the false one.